A series is a commitment. It's not easy. Novel plotting process. Character profile worksheet. In my wildest dreams, I would have a career like Rick Riordan. Hey guys, I'm Kate. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be trying to write like Rick Riordan. Normally when I do these tried writing like videos, I'm attempting to replicate the famous author's routine to the best of my abilities. You know, what time of day do they write? Do they write by hand? What's their daily goal, etc. And that's worked because by and large, most of these authors had pretty strict routines. And in fact, it was in a lot of cases the routine that helped them to be productive. However, I'm sure you can tell this is all a preamble setting up for the fact that Mr. Rick Riordan does not have a routine. It's hard to say really with my daily routine because every day is different. If I'm at home, I'll get up in the morning and I'll usually do a little bit of writing, and then I will stop when the kids get up and my sons are ready to go to school. I'll get them off to school. I'll take care of some business and then I'll go back to the writing in the afternoon. I tend to work best around the edges of the day and early morning or late at night when the house is quiet and my mind seems to work best then. And I'd like to say that I write 8 hours a day. I don't. I usually write about 2 or 3 hours a day maximum, and I find that after that I just get diminishing returns and I'm just not able to do much more than that. So understandably you might be wondering, well then Kate, how are you planning to write like Rick Riordan if Rick Riordan arguably doesn't write? I was gonna say Rick doesn't write like Rick, but that's not true. Rick writes exactly like Rick, just sans routine. Well, Rick Riordan has a lot of writing advice to give. He's written some incredible stories, he's started his own imprint, and he's taken sort of this top spot in this category of authors that I aspire to be like. You know, in my wildest dreams, I would have a career like Rick Riordan. Within Rick's advice, he talks a lot about the process of writing, exercises that can be done, his personal favorite way to outline, so on and so forth. So I basically just decided to give as many of his points of advice a try today. But first, I did write this morning already because I want to make sure that I do get those 3 hours in. And since Rick loves the kind of cusp times of day, I decided that I needed to wake up and start writing pretty early in the morning. And from that, I did manage to add 1,412 words. It was actually in a revision project, so it was kind of a mixture of revision words and like new words. Then I did take a break, I went and worked out, and now I am here, sitting in front of you, talking to this camera. Yes. So to start us off, I want to talk about characterization, but first I need to show you something. Look at this. I froze it. I came out to make my tea, and I froze it. Curse you, refrigerator. Ah! Oh no. I mean... Rick's best advice in writing characters is to define them by their actions, but if I was a character in a book, I would hope that this would not be a defining characteristic for me. Frickin' freezing my tea. So, oh, it tastes good though. Anyways, I'm pulling a lot of this from the advice for writers section of Rick Riordan's website, and it's filled with great stuff. One of these sort of activities I want to key in on is under the question, how do you develop characters? And as someone who's loved the Percy Jackson series and the Heroes of Olympus series, I feel like I can confidently say, at least as a reader, how incredible I find Rick Riordan's characters to be and how distinct they are. And so I especially love that first you define the character by the action, and then that's followed by dialogue and description, but never through explanation. Characters above anything else, I think, fall under this show don't tell philosophy. But on his 5 top tips for characters, he does say that he has a character profile worksheet he sometimes fills out if he's having trouble understanding a particular character. And there's all these questions, and so I thought, you know what? I don't usually fill out character profiles. I've talked about them in the past about how I just don't know that they help me all that much. But I think it's obviously worth trying, and if it works for Rick, maybe it can work for me. So, let's do it. The first thing I'm gonna do is just drag and... Excuse you, where did you go? First thing I'm gonna do is copy and paste this into... Excuse? What? Fine, I'll do it this way, even though I don't want to do it this way. Alright, and then in my little research category on Scrivener, I'm going to add a new text file and then just copy and paste it over there and get rid of all the shit that I didn't want. Delete! Now, because I'm writing a romance series, it's really important for me to sort of have, at least bare minimum, the 2 main characters sorted out, right? The one that we're kind of seeing most of the story through the eyes of, and of course the love interest. So to start, I'm gonna do my main character. Lexi. Do I have a last name for her? In shocking fashion, I do. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I do. Oh, Romano. I got it. Lexi Romano. A surprise to us all. Now, a lot of these questions are kind of the first things you might think of, or at least the first things you notice about someone when you're meeting them in person. And I like that as you go farther along, we get into more in-depth sort of questions. And I like that in his bio, at least, there's some distinction about what the character is like generally versus what they're like in this story. Let's get to filling this out. Now, I actually really liked some of this. At first, I started by bolding some of the things that were actually important to the story, but then there were some things that prompted me to think of a scene or a way I already had a scene that I could come at it from a different angle, which is always fun. So there's something I think to be said for actually doing this maybe in the revision stage, at least for me, because usually what happens when I'm doing it in the drafting stage is that I've completely forgotten about it, much like all the outlining and whatever other work I did when I actually start to write. So in this revision stage, I'm more likely to remember it and also be able to incorporate it and sort of change things up. So I actually kind of liked this question, neat or messy. It's a basic question, and yet I think that it's gonna help. I also really appreciated that he had us answer if we liked the person, like we, the author, liked the person. There is a question on here about will the readers like or dislike this character, but it is kind of nice to think about it from the writer's perspective, because we tend to like characters for different reasons than the audience. Yeah, I just thought that was cool. It's not something I think about that often, even though I know it's true for a lot of writers where their favorite character in their books aren't always the favorite characters that the readers like. And then for general plot stuff, thinking about what traits your characters have that will either help or hurt them achieve the goal is ultimately just so important, because you don't want the goal to be separate from the character. You want all of it to kind of work together. So yeah, I just like that that's something that he has in here. So you know what? It was helpful. It was helpful. A surprise face. Now though, I'm actually going to switch to writing by hand for something. Kind of the first piece of writing advice that Rick gives is to just spend 15 minutes each day writing. And he doesn't even say that it needs to necessarily be in your story. In fact, he recommends journaling. Journaling about observations you have for story ideas, journaling about people and thinking about their descriptions and sort of working on that aspect of writing. I think some part of it is making a habit of the writing. So yeah, I'm actually gonna do 15 minutes and I am gonna journal, and I haven't decided about what yet, but by hand journaling, we're gonna see. There we go. Which color do I want? Purple. Okay, so I think I kind of nailed a little bit about an inner monologue. It's always fun for me to play with my own thought process and try and tell it from in different ways. Does that make sense? It's like a stylistic thing. I'm playing with my own journal stylistically. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyways, I really like the concept of doing this every day for 15 minutes just to like get the kind of creative juices flowing. Also, this is reminding me, because my hand was starting to hurt again, how much I hate writing by hand. Okay, now let's spin you back over to the computer. Yeah? Yeah. Hello. Because one of the most interesting things to me about Rick Riordan is almost his novel plotting process, I guess I would say. There's the classic question, plotter versus pantser. It's the easiest one to throw out there to get to know another writer better. And despite all of us kind of landing somewhere randomly on this spectrum, I appreciate the way that Rick Riordan does it. Again, on Rick's own website, his interview with Jonathan Stroud, he says, "My outlines are loose, which helps. I usually sketch out a paragraph for each chapter with the basic ingredients: location, characters involved, and which mythological monster or situation they will face. Location's very important to me, as my books tend to be geographic odysseys. I spend a lot of time thinking about where to take my characters and how that locale will affect the action. The details of each chapter, however, develop organically, and with every book, the plot takes turns I didn't expect. That's okay with me. In fact, it's one of the joys of writing. When all the elements come together, it's like alchemy, creating something something that somehow is greater than the sum of its parts. I try to outline. I try to plot out books before I start writing them. Sometimes it's just Freytag's pyramid. Sometimes I try to go more in depth. I've had times where I've attempted the chapter by chapter outline, and for whatever reason, it's never worked for me. Because I go off outline. Not only do I go like a little bit off outline, but I go like a lot of bit off outline. However, I'm very interested in this method, and I especially like the idea of limiting myself to only a paragraph and the sort of barest of bones approach to the outlining. Even though the book I'm writing right now isn't as location focused as I think Rick Riordan's is, if I like it, this could really help me with my fantasy stuff, and is actually why I ended up purchasing Aeon Timeline a while back to do kind of the same thing. The characters involved, the location, and just like a few kind of notes on it. That being said, I'm actually talking myself into changing projects on this. Yes, I'm going to change projects. I have decided. Decided. I need a gavel. I'm actually going to switch to Meridian Maps, the third book in the series. The one that I'm currently drafting. Because though I currently have some sort of idea for some number of the scenes, I actually don't know all that much. I certainly don't have it fleshed out enough to have a paragraph for each scene, but I think having a paragraph for each scene would really help me whether I completely stick with it or not as I write. So let's frickin' do it. I feel like this is going to be the exercise that takes the longest, clearly. Will I even be able to do this? Will this push my pantsing, loving self too far? I don't know. We'll find out together. So, it is now 8:14 p.m. I did go on my run, so I've been doing this like kind of off and on all day, but oh my gosh. I apparently had not filled out the scenes before, other than the first scene that I was writing, or I had, but like not really. Not to the extent that I think Rick Riordan would do with the paragraph, the characters involved, and the location, etc. And location, like I mentioned for the fantasy stuff, is so important here because we gotta find the maps, we gotta do all this stuff. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 filled in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 labeled but not filled in, and then obviously I'm gonna need more scenes than that. So look, it's hard to do this. I don't know why I'm always so ambitious on these things, where I'm like, it's gonna be so easy. It's not easy. So my plan is to actually continue writing like Rick Riordan tomorrow, and I'm going to see if I can get any more of this figured the heck out. But the final way in which I would like to live like Rick Riordan today, whatever, you know what I mean, is by reading this book. Because I'm not done with it yet. Let's make sure to file and save. Under his advice for young people who want to be writers, the second thing he talks about is reading a lot. Read everything you can get your hands on. You will learn the craft of writing by immersing yourself in the voices, styles, and structures of writers who have gone before you. Don't be afraid that you'll start sounding like a particular writer you admire. That just means you need to read more, not less. It's time to read. Will she ever finish this book, you might be wondering? Who knows, I say. Okay, I'm gonna attempt to sort of outline like Rick Riordan tomorrow, and I will read some more and do all that other stuff, but we're gonna talk a little bit more about Rick's books and just some other quotes I thought were really interesting. But for now, good night. All right, and it's now the next day. I have managed to fill in those 5 or 6 scenes so that each of them have that paragraph description. However, I have not thought up any additional scenes and have yet to actually put them in the context of the story. Or I've thought up little things, but yeah. So right now, I'm sitting at 13 completed scenes outlined to the way that Rick Riordan likes to do it. And I have actually really liked this system. To be determined if this is going to work for me to come up with any more scenes, but I gotta try something. So usually I just write my way through it. Maybe this time I will do a mixture of both of these options. But I do actually want to talk about the Meridian maps, or more specifically titling this series. Now obviously, as it's yet to be published, things can change, but I have a history of being unable to title my own projects. And Rick had a really funny story about how his initial title for the Percy Jackson series for the first book did not go over well with the middle school class he was teaching. From adlit.org, the quote says, "The first title was Son of the Sea God, and the kid said, no, you can't call it that because it gives away who the father is too early. Oh yeah, so I changed that, and that became The Lightning Thief." It just always warms my heart a little bit at the prospect that I am not the only one who struggles with titles. I know that's not true. I know tons of people struggle with titles, but to see someone like Rick Riordan not have his title perfectly figured out makes me feel a little bit better. I also want to talk about the books that Rick Riordan has written, specifically some pros and cons of writing a series and why he gravitates toward them. From the same interview with Jonathan Stroud, "I've always preferred reading series, whether detective fiction or fantasy or science fiction. I feel somewhat cheated if I invest my time getting to know the characters and the carefully crafted world in a novel and then I'm never allowed to visit again. So for me, there was never any doubt Percy Jackson would be a series. That's simply my default setting. The only question was how many books I would write. Because I like series, I do have to think long and hard about which projects to tackle next because I won't be committing to just one novel. I'll be spending 3 to 5 years creating a multi-book arc." This is something I find so crazy about writing series, and as the Meridian Maps is the first series that really I'm attempting to write, I'm discovering for myself. It is no small feat to write a series, and while it's so fun to explore the characters, I think, in more depth, or at least for longer, than you'd be able to in a standalone novel, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And because it takes so much time, you then have to sort of shuffle through which projects you can fit in there, which projects are worth fitting into this, and just like anything else, you can make miscalculations along the way. The bottom line is, a series is a commitment. That being said though, I'm so glad he's written a lot of series. In fact, I have a section here and an entire section down there devoted to Rick Riordan books. People who are even bigger fans of his, who have read all of his series, would have at least one entire shelf dedicated to him. Like, how cool is that? But as I haven't read all of his books, I actually wanted to turn to my sister-in-law. I asked her to try and like pitch his adult books to people who have only read his children's novels.
So I think the original reason why I started to read them is because the title was really intriguing. It was The Devil Went Down to Austin, which is actually the 5th book I found out. I kind of accidentally read them out of order. But I was like, I've been to Austin before, so it was kind of cool to know the setting. And then it was exactly as I somewhat imagined, because it is a police procedural. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically private detective. He was very funny. The only like a really adult thing is, I guess, the humor.
Yeah.
People are sarcastic, a little less slapstick, a little less mysterious. It's kind of like you hear his inner thoughts, and they're a little more what you imagine a teenager and older to think like. But also, it's more serious content.
Did you like the mystery? Like, was it told well? Because you read a lot of.
Okay. I think were 5 books in this series, and every time I was like, oh yeah, this is completely obvious, but then I was completely wrong every single time.
Oh, perfect.
No, I liked it a lot because they do hit up spots that you know of if you've ever been to Austin, and he does play a professor at UT Austin, so it's kind of that like tie, and you're like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, that is fun.
And this is like multi-dimensional characters. He doesn't just have one niche.
Yeah.
And I liked it because yes, the mystery was fun, the twists were fun, the sarcasm was fun, but it also felt like, yes, it was escapism, but it was grounded in the reality of like adulthood. Yeah. And that's why I would recommend.
Perfect. Now, I did also ask my brother to explain why someone who's read the adult books should try out the children's novels, but unfortunately that file corrupted a little bit and I'm having way too much trouble with it. So basically, to summarize, what rock are you living under that you have not read Rick Riordan's children's novel? They are excellent, and I, in fact, need to get on it and read the Magnus Chase series. But alright, that is gonna be it for me. Please do comment down below. Let me know what you think of Rick Riordan's non-writing routine, or just some of his advice. Let me know if you yourself have a writing routine, if that's changed a lot over time. Also, please do let me know what you think of character profiles, and if you have a personal favorite one. But thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you especially to some of my new patrons this month. Roy Marfo, Jody Cooper, Ferenzo, Ronnie McVeigh, and Singing Sanja, and I will see y'all all very soon at the new video. Bye! As many of Rick's writing advice... Something about that was hard. Why isn't this working? Ooh. motherfucker.